Hello and welcome back to Organized Chaos. Today's episode is about a topic that affects many founders as their startup begins to experience success, and that is the unique challenges that emerge during the scaling phase. These challenges can often be invisible to founders, especially the first time founders out there. Throughout my career working with startups, I've observed several common hurdles that founders consistently face. Today, I'll walk you through the most significant ones I've encountered and provide practical strategies to overcome them. Let's start with what I call the hero mentality. This is something I see constantly with founders who've successfully led their companies through the early stages. They try to maintain hands on control of everything instead of delegating and trusting others to lead. The problem with this approach is that it creates a ceiling that prevents the organization from growing beyond the founder's personal capacity. This hero mentality often manifests as micromanagement of other managers. Founders hire executives and managers but don't allow them to truly own their domains. They undermine their authority and effectiveness, which defeats the whole purpose of bringing in experienced leaders in the first place. Some examples of this include ignoring advice from direct reports, overturning their decisions, or making decisions within a manager's area of expertise without consulting them. I was recently having a coffee chat with one of my HR colleagues, and she told me a story of how the founder she reports to made a decision to lay off employees and selected who will be impacted without letting her know. She first heard about it with all the other leaders during their regularly scheduled team meeting. The solution here is to embrace delegation and trust your team. But I know that's easier said than done. Here's a practical approach I've seen work well. Start by listing everything you do as a founder, then categorize each task into 3 buckets. The first bucket includes things you have to do, but challenge yourself here. Are these truly critical to the business? For example, do you really need to approve every single hiring decision, or can you trust your department heads with this responsibility? Do you really need to sign off on every purchase order, or can you set a threshold for a dollar amount that requires your approval? The goal with the first bucket is to trim the list to the absolute necessary items that only you can do with the company, at least for now. The second bucket includes the things you like to do. These are typically activities you enjoy and are good at. If they're critical to the business, keep them. If not, identify team members who might be better suited or whose work naturally aligns with these tasks. For example, you might be someone who loves numbers and is good at financial modeling, but you already have a solid finance person who can take most of this load off your shoulders. On the other hand, you might love product design and decide to focus a good chunk of your time in that space because you also do it well. But beware, as a founder, you don't want to dominate the areas of the business in which you want to spend time in. You still want to give your team the autonomy to do their work. The goal with the second bucket is to narrow it down to the critical work in the company that you want to be doing as long as you're good at it. The third and final bucket includes the things you don't like to do. These should be delegated immediately, regardless of their importance. Why? Because if you don't enjoy doing something, chances are you're not doing it particularly well either. I generally advise founders to apply another lens to this third bucket. Ask yourself if any of the items in this bucket are even necessary. In other words, do these things impact the business in any way? What would happen if we didn't do them at all? If you're struggling to find an answer or clearly say they have an insignificant impact, then you should probably eliminate them altogether. As a founder, your time should be spent in areas where you excel, but you must provide enough delegation and trust your team to get their jobs done effectively. It's counterintuitive and costly to hire skilled professionals, then tie their hands to the point where they become incapable of living up to their true potential. Now let's talk about another common challenge: mistaking growth for readiness to scale. Many founders rush to scale their operations once they hit a revenue goal or customer acquisition metric. They see the numbers going up and think, great, let's expand. But here's the thing, revenue growth doesn't automatically mean you're ready to scale. Just because you hit $10 million in ARR doesn't mean you go on an expansion spree. Before expanding operations, you need robust systems and processes in place. You need to address bottlenecks and ensure your infrastructure can support the expansion. I've seen countless startups stumble because they tried to scale without having the proper foundation in place. Think of trying to build a skyscraper on the foundation of a 4-story building. It will come crashing down the moment you exceed that foundation's capacity. It's the same with a company's operating infrastructure. When your operation is built for a handful of people and relies heavily on unstructured processes, then things start falling apart the more people you add. Let me walk you through a real story just to demonstrate how this can be devastating to a company. I once worked for a startup that experienced triple-digit growth for 3 straight years. At the time, the company's engineering team was made up of only 4 people, and they worked closely together in an office setting. The team was writing code that was somewhat sloppy, and they didn't build with scaling in mind. The documentation was somewhat non existent, and the team made a conscious decision to ship software that was just good enough, not something they'd hang their hat on from a reliability standpoint. The software was running well, customers were coming in, but there were some serious design limitations that posed risks as the company added more and more customers. Once this revenue spurt happened, the company decided to triple the development team, and they also went fully remote during the COVID pandemic. It didn't take long for things to go sideways. The next software release broke the platform. Customers were having issues logging in, retrieving data, accessing reports, and all kinds of other usability issues. In the first week of that release, the customer support team received more than 10 times the amount of support tickets they typically receive. It was a disaster of epic proportions. Leadership called for a root cause analysis of the situation and was met with a laundry list of issues and a lot of finger pointing. In the end, the company had to hire an external provider to audit the infrastructure, and they ended up rebuilding the entire software. This cost them millions of dollars and lost them dozens of customers. We're talking years of progress here that were wiped out by immature scaling. Although it might sound like a complex set of issues that can lead a company to this outcome, the solution is quite simple. I always tell founders to operate with success in mind. It means that founders should build their operation from day one with the notion of expected success and scale. Essentially, a mindset of when, not if, we're going to scale. You shouldn't wait for your customer base to explode before you get serious about how you operate. If you are serious about building a business that stands the test of time, then you need to be serious about how you build it. Don't cut corners and make sure that you are building on a solid foundation. Now let's move on to the next challenge that can quite literally make or break your startup: poor cash flow management. I've seen too many founders fall into the trap of overspending on non-essential activities once they start seeing some success. It's like getting your bonus paycheck and immediately buying a luxury car instead of fixing the leaky roof in your house. Let me give you a real-world example here. I recently worked with a startup that had just secured their Series A funding. Instead of focusing on their core product that got them the funding in the first place, they immediately launched 3 new product initiatives. They hired aggressively across all departments and moved into a fancy office space. 6 months later, they were facing a cash crisis and had to lay off 30% of their staff. You want to know the sad part? None of those new initiatives gained any real traction, and they were all canned eventually. This is a common pattern. Founders trying to do too much too soon after experiencing early success. Here's my advice. Focus on what made you successful in the first place. Fine-tune it, iterate on it, and make it the absolute best it can be before moving on to the next thing. Remember the saying, what got you here won't get you there? Well, sometimes what got you here needs to get even better before it can take you there. Cash flow management needs to be at the forefront of your scaling strategy. This means having realistic cash flow projections based on your growth plans, and keeping burn rates front and center. Costs can skyrocket very quickly when scaling. Everything from hiring costs to infrastructure expenses to marketing budgets can spiral out of control if not managed properly. However, and this is crucial, don't confuse cash flow management with being overly conservative with spending. I've seen founders swing to the other extreme here. They maintain too tight a grip on spending and underinvest in critical infrastructure and talent needed for growth. That is not what we're talking about here. The goal is to be strategic with your spending, not a penny pincher. Here's what I recommend. Create clear spending thresholds tied to specific business milestones. For example, you might decide that you'll only expand your sales team after reaching $1 million in annual recurring revenue. Or you'll only invest in a new product line after your flagship product achieves an 85% annual renewal rate for the second straight year. This approach ensures that your spending grows in tandem with your business success, not just your ambitions. Also, maintain a detailed tracking system for all your expenses and regularly review them against your revenue and growth metrics. Are you getting the expected return on investment? Are there areas where you're overspending without seeing proportional results? These regular reviews can help you catch potential cash flow problems before they become critical. Another significant challenge is the founder's resistance to changing the initial team if necessary. This is understandably a very sensitive topic. Many founders struggle to transition away from early team members who helped build the company, but may not be equipped to handle its next phase of growth. They hesitate to bring in more experienced leaders who are objectively more qualified, and this creates a trust deficit in leadership that impacts the founder's credibility with current and future staff, but also with potential investors in case the company is seeking outside funding. Founders will sometimes double down on this and engage what I call emotional hiring. Not only do they keep the initial team around, but they keep giving them bigger roles, responsibilities, and authority that they might not be qualified for. Even worse, they hire more qualified people and have them report to their underqualified team. This happens more often than you'd expect with founders, especially those who hire friends and family members. Here's my approach to handling this. As a founder, you need to gradually augment the original team with new experts as your company starts to experience success. Over time, some of your early team members will learn from these experts and evolve with the company as it scales. Others will either leave or need to be let go due to their inability to add value beyond a certain point. This is completely normal and something founders need to accept. Another piece of advice I generally give to founders is to be transparent with the team. Be clear that there could come a day when the current leadership might become middle management, transition to other more suitable roles, or even exit the company entirely. But I also recommend complementing that message with an assurance that the original team that got the company to where it is gets rewarded fairly for their contributions, even if an exit is inevitable. That can take the form of generous equity, severance, and so forth to give these people the recognition they deserve for playing an integral role in the company's success. The final challenge I want to address is inadequate information flow. As organizations grow, founders sometimes become bottlenecks by not streamlining internal communication and maintaining transparency. Information distribution becomes increasingly critical as your company grows. Teams cannot function effectively without the right information, which can lead to decision paralysis, bottlenecks, and frustrated teams. Even worse, it can result in missed market opportunities because you lose the speed factor that is a competitive advantage for startups. As a founder, you want to make sure that your company has a clear vision for how communication flows across the organization. Employees cannot possibly do their best work if it's a constant struggle to get relevant information. Companies feel the pain with this when the founder is away from the office or if a key member of the team leaves the company and all of a sudden the work comes to a screeching halt. Then you know that you have an information flow issue at hand. Let me share a real example that I witnessed recently at a fast-growing SaaS startup. This company had grown from 20 to 100 employees in just 18 months, and their product team was working on a major platform upgrade that would affect the entire customer base. The founder was deeply involved in the technical execution and held most of the critical information about the upgrade in their own private shared drive and shared it with only a select few people. The planned upgrade went through multiple iterations, and the product they were building was very different from what others in the company expected based on previous communication. So the sales team was selling features that the product team hadn't even started building yet. The customer success team wasn't properly briefed on the upcoming changes and couldn't prepare their customers. Meanwhile, the marketing team was creating content based on outdated product information. The result, as you can imagine, was complete chaos. Sales had to backtrack on promises made to prospects. Customer success was blindsided by angry customers who heard different things from different team members, and marketing materials had to be scrapped and redone. And the worst part? The engineering team had to repeatedly pause development to answer questions from other departments, which significantly delayed their launch. This is a perfect example of how poor information flow can create a domino effect of problems across the organization. The solution isn't complicated, but it requires intentional effort. This particular company solved their information flow problems by implementing 3 key changes. First, they created a central knowledge base where all product roadmap information, feature specifications, and launch timelines were documented and regularly updated. Second, they established a weekly asynchronous progress report where representatives from each department could share updates and align on priorities. Those progress updates were also reflected in the central knowledge base. Finally, they implemented a simple but effective communication protocol. Any major decision or change had to be documented and shared with all relevant teams within 24 hours of it being made. The result was a dramatic turn. Teams could make decisions faster, customer communications became more consistent, and the company avoided the kind of expensive mistakes that come from teams working with different information. As your company grows, how information is distributed becomes increasingly critical. Teams cannot function effectively without the right information at the right time. When information gets stuck in silos or bottlenecked through a few key individuals, it leads to delayed decisions, missed opportunities, and frustrated teams. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with some final thoughts. These challenges are a normal part of the scaling journey, but they don't have to derail your success. The key is to recognize these patterns early and take proactive steps to address them. Remember, scaling isn't just about growing bigger, it's about growing smarter. As a founder, your role needs to evolve from being the person who does everything to the person who enables others to do their best work. This requires trust, delegation, and sometimes making difficult decisions about people and processes. In the next episode, I'll dive into the concept of talent density and why it's important for the success of early stage companies. See you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review wherever you get your podcasts. This will help me spread the word about organized chaos and keep the show going. If you have any questions or topics you'd like to suggest for the show, please send me an email to hello@organizedchaos.fyi. For more content and resources, make sure to check out the website at organizedchaos.fyi. See you on the next one.